It looks like we are live. We're in the show. So we're going to get started. Hi.
Hi, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you. It's been a minute.
It has been too many minutes.
Yeah. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is Anne-Louise Marquis. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the National Portfolio Brand Ambassador for Campari America. It means I cover all the brands, I cover the whole country, and I get to help out kind of wherever and whenever I'm needed at Campari. And we are partnering with Portland Cocktail Week to do distance learning on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we're doing some really fun topics. Today, I'm really excited to be hosting the one and only Michael J. Neff. What does the J stand for?
John.
Nice. Michael John Neff here today. I've known him as a Angelino and as a New Yorker. Now he's a Houstonian. Are you claiming it yet?
I mean, I just kind of claim the country at this point. I mean, I have Southern California in my blood. I have New York in my heart. From there, everything just kind of adds up. So.
Nice. Okay, so we got a man of the country, a man of the world, bar owner, bar consultant, cocktail drinker, cocktail thinker. He might be sipping on some Russell's Reserve right now.
Maybe just sneakily.
It might be happening. So we're gonna. What is the original when you proposed this idea? What was your thought for what this class was going to be on?
I mean, so I've spent years now training a lot of bartenders, and we find ourselves in a really interesting position now because, you know, a lot of what I've been training bartenders on has been the kind of the whys, not so much the how, but what's the purpose, like the underlying philosophy of what we do. And it's not important for the public, but for me, it's always been important for bartenders, because if you can do something on purpose, you know, and whether this is, you know, community is a word, and it's a word that means a lot and is very much like a part of what we do, whether we know we're doing it or not. My thought process has always been, you should know that you're doing it, and that way you can kind of do it on purpose and maybe learn to improve it without having to just muddle through and figure it out. What I found is that because of the pandemic, like that conversation is one I've been having with bartenders. It was never necessary to have it with the public. In fact, you didn't want to have it with the public because you don't want people to necessarily know why you're doing what you're doing. You just want them to experience it. So for me, I'm always like, when you walk out of a bar, I don't want to think about it. I want to feel about it. And it was fine. It was only like now, because of the pandemic and the closures and the risk of bars and all those things, I find myself having to do what I'm doing with bartenders to the public a lot more often, because now you have to say, no, wait. Like, you know, it wasn't really necessary that you knew what I did before. Now it's really necessary because you need to know what is at risk. So, you know, it's just taking that same conversation that we've been having and then trying to expand it as widely as possible.
I have this phrase I use a lot, that what something looks like and what something is are very different.
Right.
Often. And so I often think about that, and like what you're saying of like, in this way that we've made it look easy, or you as bar owners and restaurant owners and people who work in hospitality make it look easy. You make it look like it's nothing, but it's actually a ton of work, and it's very thoughtful, conscious work, like you're saying.
Right.
And people didn't realize, I think, because we've made it look easy, people take it for granted.
Right. Well, and even as we're talking about bars and businesses shutting down, like especially in the beginning, the narrative was always like, well, I mean, there's a certain economic Darwinism to it in people's heads, where a lot of the conversation, even from within the industry, was, well, if one bar closes down, I mean, it just kind of happens, right? Another one will come. And so it's not like the industry's at risk. And my response to that still, and always has been, I'm like, it's not easy to open a bar. It's not easy to open a bar that anyone wants to go to. It's not like you can just, and that's the box that we've allowed ourselves to be put in, because we don't define what we do. You know, we don't lobby. We don't have to, you know, my friend Lindsay, and she owns a bar called Two-Headed Dog in Houston, and she puts it in a way that is pretty accurate. She's like, well, look, we're all in our little pirate ships, all bobbing along the sea, you know, and you know we're relatively aligned because we're all pirates, but you know we do things in our own way, and we didn't become pirates because we wanted to be in a club, right?
Right.
And so we're used to being on the margins because that's where we exist. there is one kind of natural disaster that would put us as an industry at risk. We just happen to be in it right now. And so all of these definitions become much more important, you know? And so, yeah, it's just like making a cocktail. Making a daiquiri seems really easy because you're like, there's only 3 things in it. What could go wrong? It turns out a lot could go wrong. You know, same old fashioned, same like all of these classic 3 ingredient cocktails. Like that metaphor and the way you put it, I think is really accurate. You know, it seems like one thing, the underlying things behind it's like a duck, you know, going on. His legs are going like under the water like this, but he's just smoothly going across the water.
Right. And it's so much of what we do is taken for granted because so much of what we do seems like second nature, seems really, but in hospitality, so often I'm doing, like when I worked behind the bar, I was doing so much. And then I went to try and articulate it to someone and I was like, actually, this is really hard to even list out all the things I'm doing right now. Like I have the skill and the knowledge about the product on the back bar. I know how to make the drink. I have the training on how to create this drink for you. I know the theory behind all those reasons, which is why I know why your drink tastes good. Right. I don't just know the recipe. I know why it tastes good. And then I also basically have a degree in amateur psychology. I'm also working security. Right. I'm also making sure the lighting is correct and the music's on and the mood is right. And the guy down there is having a good time as much as the woman over here. So it's like you start to break down how much is happening that we just take for granted as customers is actually a lot.
Yeah. And that's why I put it in terms of community, because one of the hallmarks of a great bartender is empathy, an enormous amount of empathy, you know? So, you know, curiosity and compassion, those 2 things, you know, everything is teachable. And I think that's why we kind of, you know, I don't want to overstate it because it's not entirely accurate, but, you know, when training programs now, have focused on what is measurable, a measurable result. So you can say, okay, and that's why I think we talk so much about cocktails and even so much about spirits, is because you can make a test that says, do you know the 5 different definitions of bourbon? Like what 5 things characterize a bourbon? Okay, yes. You know those things. Oh, you forgot this one. Now we know how to now we know what to focus on. Do you know these 10 recipes that we made up? Do you know these 100 cocktails that every bartender should know? And then you can look at that person and say, you're really good. You're done. You know, what we often do then is we throw these, you know, young people that are relatively untrained in my book and throw them into a shift. And we're like, good luck. Good luck understanding what's going to happen when someone looks at you cross-eyed because you told them they can't do something. Good luck when your manager comes up and screams at you because the music's too loud or too soft, or why are you playing this song? Good luck with, you know, some girl who's sitting there like literally silently bawling her eyes out in front of you, like all by herself, trying to hide it. And you're just sitting there going like, do you want an old fashioned? Like, let's talk about my spec for a daiquiri. Like, it doesn't, like, we don't, you know, those are not measurable things. So, you know, my training programs are so long because so much of it is working side by side with people. And then, you know, either almost never during, but before or after a night, looking at moments and saying, okay, this happened, you know, and because it's a mindset issue. It's a mindset issue, and it's so difficult it's difficult to train because you have to walk people through this idea of what a community actually is, how it applies to bars, and what the bartender's part in that is. And
so let's talk about that a little bit, actually. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think that's an important thing to focus on, to say, okay, so we know that bars are important. We've been working in this industry for a long time.
Right.
And then the bartender as well. How do we, so can you state why they're important? Can you give me, like, I think, you know, I have my own answer, but like, can you give me, can you kind of give me your, like, bars are important for this reason? Like, if I was going to argue this to someone who's not, you know, in the industry.
Like a lobbyist who has to go and lobby a city government, for example.
For example.
Or national news media. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, bars are one of the last places that you can go that are designed specifically to welcome every person and give everyone opportunity to be able to congregate with other people in a public setting and in a situation that by its definition means you are open to having conversation. And as soon as you're open to having conversation, you're open to changing your mind about something. So imagine sitting next to, my favorite story is, I worked at a bar called Grace in Tribeca for years. And one of my favorite stories is that every Monday night, two people would come in, not together, just randomly. It's two men. One guy was the biggest cocaine dealer that I knew, and one guy was a Supreme Court judge in New York State. And they both loved baseball. So every Monday night they would come in and they would eat a burger and they would drink a couple beers and they'd sit next to each other and talk shit about baseball the whole time. And as the bartender, you're sitting there going like, this is great. Because the next time you guys meet, it's not going to be in this circumstance. But those are the, but it's putting yourself out in public in a way that you are forced to interact with other people means that you have to be open to other people's mindsets, way of life, lifestyle, etc. If I know you and if we spoke briefly about anything, all of a sudden you can't really hate me that much. You can't put me in a category of the other if we've already had a 20-minute conversation about baseball or about the song that's on right now or about, oh my God, why do you come here? Oh, I love this person. I love that person.
Right.
A bartender is an orchestrator at that point. And a community of people is we're the one place that misfits can go. We're the one place that if you're visiting and you don't have anybody, where can I feel like a local? If you're broke and you just lost your job, where can I feel like it's still normal? If you're lonely for whatever reason, if you're divorced, if you're all of these things, there is nowhere to go that anyone can come and still have that expectation. If you're affiliated with a group, there's places. So if you're I often compare bars to churches. So if I'm a Catholic and I'm traveling, I could probably go to a Catholic church and be welcomed. But if I'm, a Muslim and I'm traveling, I'm probably not going to go to a Catholic church to feel welcome. Bars are the last neutral zones. And bartenders are the ones who can make that the most powerful.
So talk about the role of the bartender in that space a little bit more.
I mean, that's the bartender is always the most important person in the building, whether it's, and that's something I think that we've gotten away from a little bit, because as we become kind of culinary and as we become as we become teachers and as we become all these things, we forget that, we are the most public person in the bar. If there's 200 people in my bar, they're probably staring at 1, 2, maybe 3 people, and all of them are focused right here. That is an incredible, that's an incredible motivator in some ways, and it changes you in a lot of ways. And, as much as you, as much as you train people for the idea of performing in a high stress environment, you really can't prepare someone to say they're all looking at me. They're all looking at me, and what am I supposed to do? The obligations of that are pretty high. And then in the meantime, you have to be able to notice what is going on with every single person. And you have to be open to notice every single person, because, if you want to please your customers, you need to be able to have a super open heart to understand, even if there's a bunch of people in there, it's how do I satisfy all of them? And one of the best defense mechanisms is to take, oh my God, Anne-Louise, it's so good to see you. I'm super busy right now. Oh my God, you're sitting next to Leo. You guys would really like each other. Anne-Louise likes, broccoli, and Leo likes broccoli, broccoli Rob. And then you just hope that people you just see these little things and you watch people, but you do it on purpose because you want people to have an experience. I travel all over the world, and you do too. And I'm sure you know what this is like. I know what it's like, probably a little bit more, because it's different being a dude sitting in a bar by yourself than a woman.
It's different, yes.
Right, but as a single person who's a man walking into random bars all over the planet, sitting down, the first thing I ask is I sit down at these places and I'm like, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen? And 90% of the time, the answer is nothing happened. Nothing happened. I was served. I might have been served kindly. I might have been served with manners, but so when I train bartenders, and this is that idea of bringing people into communities, all of a sudden you you know, I tell bartenders like a single lone person sitting at the bar is your most important focus. Who are they?
Oh,
What
for
are they
sure.
from? What are they doing here? Because if you don't know those things, how are you going to know what to do with them? You know, oh my God, you're here for 3 days. You should ask, you know, Jim over there at the end of the bar. Like he has the best restaurant recommendations in the city of San Antonio. Like done, super done. I just gave this guy an amazing trip. I just made Jim feel like a local pro. They're probably going to talk about stuff all night long, so I don't have to talk to them. So I can go off and make drinks and talk to other people. Like these are just, you know, our defense mechanisms are the same thing that build community.
So, okay, this is a question. The thought popped up in my mind was that, okay, so I started, how do I phrase? I'm trying to find like the perfect way to phrase this question and also give you background. So I feel like you and I were both performers, actors. We were comfortable being on stage. That's correct. You were a performer, right?
I was
playwright. Okay. So I came from a space where like I had theater, and then my experience in theater very easily transitioned into working in a bar.
For sure.
But also my passion was always the hospitality. Like the drinks and the spirits were fun, but what was the most fun was to your point of like that one person sitting at the bar. Because like for me, for anybody, like the dog I was just babysitting for my boyfriend, I'm like, how do I blow your mind?
Right.
Like, what is the thing that is going to change your night or give you the best time, whatever. And I think that's what, and I'm not saying I'm the best bartender, but I'm saying that's what I get when I sit at these bars where someone really is clued in to offering me more than just a drink, right? It's what is this experience going to be? And what is this empathy going to tell them to give me? And in this transition where I feel like in this industry, we're seeing more and more people do this full time, and they're moving into this career, and we're doing all this training, like you're saying, on spirits and specs. How do you train? Like, I know you said you do kind of these postmortem, like at the end of the night, but like, how do you inspire someone to care about empathy, to care about blowing someone's mind when it's not on the test?
Yeah, I mean, it's always on my test, so I don't have a great answer for that probably. But I mean, what I do know is that because, you know, you kind of have to hire for it if you're looking for it as a manager or a hiring person. But you know, Houston's a great experiment for me in that regard because I didn't know anybody, so I basically, and no one knew me. So normally, if I'm in New York or LA, like, there's usually someone that I've worked with or who's kind of, you know, been working with me in some form, or, you know, kind of like they want to come to work with me on purpose. In Houston, not the case. Not the case at all. In fact, quite the opposite. So, you know, I'm used to not having to start over with every single person. So I had to take a staff. And, you know, in the beginning, they thought I was speaking dolphin. They're like, we don't know what you're talking about. We don't know. Right, exactly. I'm like, right. They're like, we don't know what you're talking about. And it's not like they didn't necessarily believe me, but they didn't believe me. Like, so much of this is about belief. And this is going to circle all the way right back into the cocktail. It's a little bit of a journey. So you have to show them the power. So we have the conversation, and they're like, whatever, Neff. You know, it's like, oh, like, I remember one of my bartenders. This was early on. I don't remember what I said, but they were talking. I heard them talking among themselves, and they said like, "Oh, what did Neff say something like inspirational again?" Like, they're just like so cynical about.
They're so sick of it.
Right. They're like, "Oh, great. Are we super important again?" Like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna change the world. Cool." Like I need Wednesday off, and where are my tips from last night? But you can see the transition when you insist on certain things, and you insist, say, look, I don't need you to know it. I don't need you to believe it. I just need you to do it. Because there's some things, if you do them over and over again, all of a sudden, a light bulb comes on your brain. You're like, oh, that's a good feeling. Like, I just nailed that. And you watch someone walk out, and you watch that look on someone's face as they kind of transition from one kind of thing to the other, or you read some review about, or you hear what someone said, or whatever the thing is, and all of a sudden you start looking at it, and you're like, oh wait, they're not. I mean, I would tell them, especially in Houston, I'm like, look, I don't want anyone to know me. I want them to know you. I want to walk in here and cover your shift one night and have people go like, oh my God, where's Adam? Like, who are you? I'm like, nobody. I'm nobody. All you need to know is I'm not Adam, because then it's my job as a bartender to then earn the trust and respect of all the people at the bar again. You know, it's a constant game of pulling belief out of people. Otherwise, why is any of this worth it? Like, what do they get? You know, and that's why I think as we started talking about cocktails, and like what you said before, it's like I know about the spirits, and I'm not going to say it's not important, especially now. I'm not going to ever diminish that. And you know about the history of the cocktails. I'm not going to diminish that either. But I can know every single thing about the history of bourbon in the United States. I can be able to quote you every major mixologist from Jerry Thomas to Dale DeGroff. And at the end of the day, I still won't understand why making an old fashioned can change someone's life. And, you know, and as with many things I say out loud, if you don't know what that feeling is, you listen to those words and say, well, somebody thinks highly of himself. I'm like, yeah, because I see it happen, and I see it happen all the time. If you don't have context around those things, and if you don't have that empathy for people, then you don't know how to do it, and you don't even know it can be done. You know, a really good bartender, training or no, can do that naturally, right? But that's why I like to talk about it in training, because either you don't know it and you need to learn, or you know how to do it and you need to do it on purpose. That's my long circuitous reason.
That's your long answer. Great.
It's a long way around. It's probably not answering.
Well, it's just, no, I think it's interesting because I feel like in the last few years, people have been drawn to this industry because they are cerebral, which is a sort of a new thing. Like for a long time, it was the doers, the active, the empathetic, like the open heart, the people who, and also like the people who like historically like weren't doing the academics that pursued hospitality.
Right.
And so the people that that moved into that space. And so now we're seeing a lot of people with like Ivy League college, you know, like very educated people who are very cerebral, who do respond to this one slice of what we do or what you do.
Right.
And yet and then my job, right, is also to focus on training on that thing, because that's the thing I'm allowed to talk about. I'm not allowed to really like, it's not my job to teach like psychology.
Right.
Really. And so not that I'm qualified to do that either, but that really our job as suppliers is to train on the products, and it's, you know, that other stuff. So it's just interesting duality of this, like, these people are coming into the industry, they're very smart, but often you see this thing that's missing of this, right? And trying to explain like, okay, there's another piece to this.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I don't have this reputation because of the bars that I've made and because of the stuff I generally say, but I'm about as big a dork as you're going to find, you know? And
I would say you're a dork.
Even in the early days before, like, you know, we were, you know, it was super public and everyone was talking about these things, you know, we would sit there and like geek out about some process or some piece of equipment or some dusty old book we found. Like we've been doing that since I've been a bartender. We've always done that. And, you know, and I love you, like the menu I have now, like I have a specific, like, you know, methods and ingredients that we make for every single cocktail on the menu. And it's like, you know, and we do that. We don't necessarily, it's a sales tool, but we do it because it's engaging for us. It's fun. It's interesting. And it's a way for us to, like, as mixologists, to proceed into the world. And by mixologist, I mean one who makes cocktails, one who makes and makes up cocktails and cocktail menus, right? You know, as bartenders, you pull from that bag if you need it, but you don't pull from that bag for every person. Some dude walks in after an Astros game. I'm not going to tell him my method for making, you know, my house-made Coke. I'm just going to say, you want a Crown and Coke? I make a dope, like, house-made cola. Like, you want it? And they'd be like, yeah, I'll try your dope ass, you know, whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then, you know, one day that person might be interested enough to say, hey, how do you do this? And as a conversation I would love. I would never lead with that. And, you know, it's not that I'm an extrovert, and it's not that I, because I'm not, I'm a 100% an introvert, but that's the power of being a bartender, is that you can go back and you get to be a different version of yourself. And it's not, what you're talking about is like kind of, I hate to say back in the day, but kind of back in the day, you either had to be good looking, super charming, very funny, or very fast. Preferably two of those four.
Probably like two or three of those. Yeah. Preferably
two or three of those. But if you had at least two of those things, and sometimes just one, you could get a job somewhere and you could probably do okay. In no sense ever could you be a dork. Not behind the bar. Not behind the bar.
No.
Maybe if you worked at some restaurant, but there weren't no.
There were cocktail bars back then. No.
And so, the more that we told bartenders that their job was to educate people, the more annoying we made them. And I think every bartender needs to look at, at themselves and really, really open up like a crystal ball and say like, okay, stare at yourself working. Am I annoying? Am I annoying? If I am, then how can I not? Because
you were such a bigger brother. It's so funny. You were like ultimate big brother.
Well,
like I would never say that.
But also that's why nobody ever hires me to do anything. Because I won't keep my mouth shut. But I mean, but that's also, but it's, I think it's really important to say, because the more we focus on those things, the less we focus about what makes us important. So, and that's why, I was having a conversation with one of my bartenders, and one of the things he said he loves is, teaching someone about rum. I'm like, well, guess what? Watching someone teach someone else something is no fun at all. So if, it's one thing to be able to say, I'm smashing, grabbing it with some customer saying like, hey, we're going to talk about rum real quick. I'm like, what about everybody else? And so that's why even with this talk, that idea of community covers all of these things, because you can't spend time being that kind of, community always needs a leader, always. And it needs someone who is, and the bar is really interesting, because even within its micro communities, there's still smaller ones too, because it's like, hey, I come to this place, but I'm part of the Wednesday night crew.
Yeah.
Or I'm part of the weekend crew. And that usually means it's because that person is here, or that person is here, or whatever. And so, and that's how we grow as bartenders and be able to do things to start making bars. Because if you're making bars, you're planting a seed of a community and you're helping it grow. And you do that by practicing that Tuesday night thing until you're really good at it. And then you pick another night and you're like, cool, I'm going to grow this night on purpose. And I'm not just going to rely on throwing some, words on social media and hope people come. I'm going to do it because people are going to walk in, and it's a slow process sometimes, but every once in a while you're just like, okay, I love Sunday nights, because I can take a dead night and within 6 to 8 weeks, I'll make it banging. Yeah. Because all I need is one person to wander in and be like, oh, you're here? It's like, we're going to have time. It's me and you right now. It's like, I feel sorry for you. You're going to walk out. It's just like, what just happened? What just happened to me? But, all of that requires so much more than just the specific training. But training like that is hard, just like training to be a free pour bartender is hard. It's not, I don't think anyone who knows would argue that there's some functional benefit to making cocktails with a jigger. You can say all those things. Everyone knows a good free pour bartender can hit whatever they're supposed to hit whenever they need to do it. The reason that we got away from doing that and training on that, and the reason we fetishize this other system, is because training a free pour bartender is expensive. It takes a long time, and you have to deal with someone screwing up a lot until they're good at it. So, instead of, and this is at the beginning of this whole thing. So we're trying to create this army of like cocktail makers. And so of course we told them, it's like, here's your thing, like do it exactly this way. And, that morphed into something that became the point. And that's true for so much of how a lot of, I say bartenders now, and based on where we're talking and to whom, it's a pretty like this much section of the 700,000 bartenders in the United States.
It's a very small slice.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
And but, I think some of these points apply to all of them. And most of us didn't go through training. We had someone who was older than us who we got to work side by side with on the Saturday night. This is the the Coughlin's Law and Tom Cruise thing. It's almost it's an apprentice mentor thing where you're working side by side with someone who says, all right, kid, it's you and me together. Don't screw it up for me. And, and it's not, it's a passing down of lore. It's not, It's not sitting down and saying, like, we're going to take a test on it. The test is, did we survive Saturday night?
So this is a question someone just asked in the feed. How do you test how well someone cares or shows empathy? As he takes a sip of Russell's Reserve. Kentucky Straight Bourbon.
Some empathy for Russell.
We're fine. We support. Anyway, go on. We're fine.
How do you know that you're in love? How do you know when a person that you really enjoy has crossed the boundary into becoming a friend? How do you know when a friend becomes a good friend? How do you know when to give someone advice and let them make their own mistakes and be there to kind of help prop them up when they've fallen down. These are complex human emotions, and bars bars are one of the last places that are unbridled humanity, and that's why people are so terrified of them. And that's why politicians will never talk about them. They'll say it's the alcohol. It's not the alcohol. But consuming alcohol in the presence of rhythm and other people is one of the oldest traditions in humanity. And the power of that is baked into our DNA. And it is a huge risk every time you walk into a new place. It is a huge risk every time you talk to somebody else in a strange bar, because you don't know what prejudices that you want to hold on to that you're going to have to discard when you meet this person.
Yeah.
And, that's just the base environment that every bartender works in, whether they know it or not. So imagine spending all of these years having that happen tens of thousands of times over the course of your career. You're like, who am I? And what am I supposed to do with this? Empathy in that point, in that case, really is a defense mechanism, because you either have to be totally walled off, in which case you shouldn't be a bartender, or you have to be totally open, but in that environment, you have to still be able to, protect yourself.
Boundaries. I mean, boundaries are important.
Boundaries are important. And also, if I'm walking around like some big bleeding wound all the time, then I'm going to walk out just like emotionally exhausted. So I need to be, and like I was talking about on the live stream that we did earlier, it's like, it's one of those many dichotomies that bartenders are. It's like, I have to be totally open, but still protected. I have to be myself, but I also have to be Michael, like bartender Michael. And those are different things.
So this is another question that just came up, and I think is a really great second part to that is, how do you, they said, how do you deal with training veteran bartenders? Which I think the implication, right, is how do you manage hiring someone with a lot of experience who may have been doing this a long time and doesn't really want training, doesn't really want education necessarily, or does, but maybe has all this other stuff that they've brought with them?
I would need more context for the question. I am the last person anybody should hire as a bartender, though I have been relatively recently hired to be on a bar team. And this was employees only in LA. So as I was opening my bar in Houston, I was actually on the team opening the new EO in Los Angeles. Yeah, that's a whole nother story. In fact, it's actually making me want a little more bourbon.
Yeah, some more bourbon.
It's super stressful.
Yeah.
But if you're hiring people, you want to hire them for the reason that what they can add to your team. Mentorship on a team is really important. And if you take a job, and this is also very difficult as you get older and as you get more experience. If you take a job, you're accepting the limitations that come with that job. And so any bartender who says they don't want to learn anything, I think I'm the most arrogant. I walk all around the world and say I'm the best bartender on the planet. I said that in front of thousands of bartenders all the time. And no one has contradicted me. So now say it again.
It must be true.
I know, right? I mean, somebody's got to be it. Why not me?
Why not?
I mean, but even in that environment, like that conversation I have for a reason, because arrogance is baked into what we do, and we need to know what to do with it and what it's for. But we also need to know what not to do with it. And one of those things is to walk into a new job and say, like, I got this. We still work for people. And also we are of service. Like in that definition means that, like, our job is to take care of everybody. And sometimes that includes the people you work for. Doesn't it all answer the question? I'm sure.
It doesn't at all answer the question. I think, but I mean, it's a great answer. I guess the question is, often I feel like new managers come in, they've inherited a staff, maybe they've never, or like a new person comes in, they're going to run this bar and they inherited the staff. And often, I mean, I've lived through this personally. I've always been the new person on the team, I was the younger bartender learning, or like who was kind of accustomed to this language. But I watched more seasoned bartenders really struggle with the kind of the new ethos coming in.
Right, I get it. Yeah, and I think you get that a lot now because, I've done a fair amount of kind of consulting, but more often I would come in as not a bar manager necessarily, but the one who's going to take, what I love taking old dive bars and kind of modernizing them, right? So this is rum houses, cocktail lounges, 3 clubs, right? And, in some of those cases, you're coming with an old crew and probably who have opinions about cocktails and how
they do. Yes.
Right. But it's like, this is really dumb. It takes way more time. We make way less
a goddamn
money.
mojito.
Like, why would I do this? This is ridiculous. And also, and this is what the mixology community writ large has not done favors for itself, at least in this regard, because it's, our earlier snottiness turned off so many people who should have been our allies, which are other bartenders. So, I say all the time in trainings, I'm like, there's nothing fancy about old fashioned. Any bar in the United States, every bar in the United States, if they have sugar, whiskey, and bitters, should make a wonderful old fashioned. There's no reason why not to. And
it's crazy that they don't, but yes.
It's crazy that they don't, but they also, a lot of them haven't been approached that way, and they've kind of internalized cocktails as something that is divisive instead of inclusive. And so, there are many bar staffs that look at someone like me. Like, I came into Madison Square Garden, and everybody was like, okay, like, who's this guy? And, as a trainer and as a manager, even though it wasn't in that case, you have to have that same compassion to say, okay, I need to show you the benefit of this. Just like you would with a new bartender who's coming on the team saying, I need to show you the benefit of what it is that you're now going to be able to offer your clientele. So many people approach their cocktail menus as look what I can do. And that's dangerous. And that, because it turns so many people off. It's not, I would rather have a list of classic cocktails that are executed perfectly than showing the world, like, Michael Neff makes such wonderful cocktails. It's like, I know I make wonderful cocktails. So does everyone else. Congratulations.
Yeah. Yes, I hear you. So what's your answer for this very lovely person who's listening? Is it?
I forgot the question. I've already forgot the question.
How do you manage training veteran bartenders? So I think what you're saying is you show the value. I think that's the thing, is like, you need to be so fluent and understand your reasons for both things, for both well-made, thoughtfully made drinks, and also a empathetic, energetic, sympathetic, and emotionally attuned bartender. And like, ideally someone is both. We're noticing that sometimes there's a divide, and that you, as the person coming in, is what I hear from you saying is like, you need to be able to give the value and explain the value of both sides to each person. So if someone skews one way or skews the other, is to say, okay, this is great, and you have this, and I want to pull you into doing this piece of the job because there is an enormous value to it.
Right.
And this is the value.
Well,
like,
I think, and that's when you just got to listen. If you're the person who has to go in that environment, you have to listen, because, I've trained union bartenders, and those are the most, those
notoriously,
are the ones who are like, we don't do, there's so many things we don't do unless you can convince me that there's a reason for me to do this. And you
Yeah.
need to be able to kind of like, some of it's showing the value, but also, you know, the worst programs and the worst consultants are the ones who have some kind of cookie cutter thing that they're going to try to put in every bar. This is my system, and I'm going to put it right here. If you don't understand, every bar is different. Every clientele is different. And if you have someone who understands that clientele, it's a wonderful value. It's like, tell me about these people.
Yeah.
Tell me what they would, you know, tell me how far we can take them. Tell me how to start them. And, and how do we start them in with this idea and then grow as time goes by? You know, you don't need to go all the way to your 20 ingredient bell pepper cocktail just because.
Please don't.
Right. Just
I hate bell pepper and cocktails.
I know, me too. But they still show up all the time.
All the time.
All the time. And every time it's always like a 3-year-old mixologist who's just like, I just discovered this. I'm like, it's still not good.
It's still not good.
Nope. Not even in a Bloody Mary.
Nope. Still not good. I also just don't like red peppers, but I don't get it out of my cocktail. Anyway, that's aside. I see what you're saying. Okay, so like finding the value in their experience, acknowledging it, asking for them to buy in and support what you're doing and support the mission, right?
And also understanding that that person is the head of his or her community. Whatever night that is, whatever, and you don't walk into a city and just tell the mayor what's going to happen.
Right.
You want to find out what the people want, what they need. You need to find out yourself how to how to bridge that gap. Because, I mean, it's the same thing with clientele. The clientele are sometimes even worse in places like that, because it's one thing to try to get the bartenders to do it. It's another thing entirely to try to get the clientele to buy it. As soon as they see a piece, like a folded piece of paper where there was none before, they're like, "Ooh, now we're fancy, huh?" People have their identities tied up into these places. Bartenders, yes. Clientele also. Their identities tied up in these places. And that's the benefit of community. Getting a community to change makes you need to at least understand what that community is.
Okay. I hope you gave him enough of an answer.
I don't know.
Okay. Okay. So this is a question. I think some people listening to this are like managers or managing like multiple units or outlets or like working on a manual of some kind. And they said, how do you get your voice across through a written guide? I'm assuming like a written bartender manual. Like, are there ways to create culture or system? Like, do you have some sort of like, rules or guidelines or policies, ethos, a mission statement, something set up to kind of create and communicate values? Yeah,
I do. And I mean, you can tell how excited I am about it. Wait for my book to come out. No one buy it. If you go to my Instagram page, which is at Cocktail Whisperer, and if you go back a little bit now, because everything now is pandemic related, but I have a series of like kind of rules for bartenders and stuff like that. And I've taken them and made them into kind of little stickers. Those to me are always training manuals. It's hard to do in writing because it's hard to just write it all down and get people to pay attention long enough to read it. I've always been told I need to make some kind of core values things, but that the efficacy of that is not for me to argue. Mm-hmm. I didn't go to business school, so sure, we need them. But, it's a focus to have training sessions on. And, I like to have, and you can find, I put a bunch of them up, and what you'll see is there'll be a number and it'll say rules for bartender. It'll say the general rule. And then generally I have like 2 or 3 sentences underneath that. But then when we have trainings, or even if it's a nightly thing, we'll just pull out a number and say, okay, let's talk about number 21, head up, eyes up. Like, what does that mean? What is the circumstances in which we do that? Oh yeah, look at that. Magic.
Look at that. What do you know?
Yeah, that's it.
Look at this thing.
But
so okay.
So if you go back and there's just like these kind of stickers and those are things that spark conversations. If I could write down the book that would make a good bartender, I would be way more wealthy than I am right now.
You mean this isn't going gangbusters for you right now?
Yeah,
owning a bar in a pandemic?
I mean,
it's not working out the way you planned?
I've had like revenue for 6 months. I think we're 6 months closed now. So yeah.
Oh my
so
God.
If you go down a little bit, like a little
yeah.
further down. Further. Oh my God. I have that expression. There we go. So protect your client. So number 2 right there, number 22. Those are all like either rules for bartenders or some core values. And those aren't meant to be consumed in isolation. They're meant to be part of a discursive training program.
Okay, well, you saw it here first, guys. This is the...
Well, okay, not first. It's been up for like 6 months.
Kidding, but that is useful, and like breaking things down into these kind of bite-sized pieces, I think is good. Also, just to remember, you know, to anyone who trains people, is like some people really learn visually. Like they learn by reading. Like that is a thing in a way that they absorb information. Most people learn by doing. So like in the kind of the split. So some people learn by seeing, some people learn by hearing, most people learn by doing. So taking these ideas and then, like you say, like working them out in real time is really where you're probably going to find the most synthesis. And
also because you're talking about, I mean, in a certain sense, you're talking about training emotions. It's like the first question we got. It's like, how does one measure empathy? You know, in the same sense, how does one write out a training manual that says, hey, everybody, what I need from you is to be your best self and empathetic, and also to be perfectly accurate and to never steal from me and to count money and face it all one direction. And please make sure that you turn the lights off before you go home. Like, I mean, it's not, you know, we can't make a checklist that said, like, did I bring my empathy today? Like I brought my wine key.
Oh, man.
I know. Wouldn't it be great?
Some days I catch myself. I'm like, you really need to go back and get your empathy. Get your empathy, Louise. But I definitely forgot my wine key. I always forgot my wine key. Let me tell you. Every goddamn day I would forget my shirt and my wine key. Okay, there's a question here that says, I watch the Cottonmouth Club virtual bar as often as I can. And I wanted to ask how important bringing people into your bar every night is to you for your, and wait. More or less, I'm going to get this right. Okay. How important is it to you and is it beneficial to you and your own mental health? Like how much of that is a piece of doing it?
That's a very good question, actually. And I would be curious to know who asked that question. Is that not allowed? Is there screen?
I don't know. I don't have it.
Things. Okay.
No, I don't even have a thing. They just put it in this document.
That's a great question.
I can look and see.
No, that's okay. I have only been able to really survive because of the nightly live stream. You know, the emotional kind of like dagger that's been thrust in everyone's heart has been more or less difficult depending on who you are, depending on how far in it you are, and depending on how big a risk you're at. But we've been at risk for the whole time. And I have felt the pain of every bar and every bartender in the country. And so that's not easy. It's not easy, and it's not emotionally easy, and it sucks in so many ways. And the only reason I mean, and this is how I put it to, and this is also kind of it ties back in the community thing. You know, we started the virtual bar because we knew our clientele were going to be alone and isolated. And that's a very dangerous situation for humans to be in, especially for long periods of time. So we wanted to make something that would at least reflect to people what it is that they're missing and they wish they could have. The other side of that is I've done this for 25 years. Like, I feed on this. This is how I, like, this is it's not just that I do it to somebody else. This is something that propels me all the time.
Right.
I was missing it too.
Right.
Without that, and without the ability to do that, without the ability to be that for people, and being able to get the reflections of all those things you give people, it's like, what am I and what am I for? Like, if I don't have that, then I don't have anything. So,
well, I think, a lot of people are having this like crisis of identity of like, who am I if I'm not working? Who am I if I'm not out in the world? Even if I'm an introvert who needs people, or an extrovert who needs to be out, it's really hard.
Right.
Sorry, keep going.
No, but it's also like an enormous amount of compassion I have for bartenders in general right now, is because we don't know necessarily the benefit, like, and people don't always understand the benefit they get from service. We get something too. We don't talk about it much because we don't talk about a lot of stuff that's really important. We just do it, and you don't know. And you know, most people's job, like I'm an idiot. Like my job, I made my job to be able to philosophize about bartending. Like who does that? Nobody. Like Gary Regan did it, and like that was it. You know, a couple other people, but it's like everyone's like, why would I do that? So they don't need to know or think about what they do. They just do it, and then but now it's gone. It's taken away from them. And there's a lot of people in this business, and that kind of depression people are feeling is just like, it's because you don't get your fix. You don't get your fix. You can be an introvert all day long, just like me. I go behind that bar and I'm like, you know who you're gonna look at? Right here, pal. This is it. Eyes up, people. Right here. Because that's part of the job. We get so much from that.
Yeah.
And that's where that cycle happens. And you know, being the county seat, having your community around you is important. You know, so it's not just our clientele lost it, it's us. So starting the virtual bar, even though much like all these unintended consequences, I didn't necessarily know that it would be the thing that kind of helped me get through. But yeah, absolutely. Every night I go on there, and every night I'm talking to my regulars. I'm seeing people. I'm seeing them talk to each other. And I'm like, okay, is this as good? I'm not going to say it's as good or as bad. Is it totally different? Yeah. But the weird thing about it was it started to scratch the same itch. And I'm like, well, that's not what I expected. Go ahead and do it for me. I did it for all these other people. And it's like, shit, it works.
And there's a follow-up question is, what else are you doing to cope with ... now? Like, what else are you doing to, like you said, to scratch the itch, to like keep your sense of self and your sense of sanity in this?
I mean, I nothing. I'm the least healthy person emotionally probably that you know, but my rage is sustaining me, and you know, I think that you know, we have waited so long. We have waited so long for someone to come save us in this whole thing, and we all sat and watched and waited because who would let this happen? Like no one's gonna let 80% of small business in the United States go away. No one's going to do that. But every month that went by, we're like, okay, like, oh wait, they are. Yeah. So part of what I have been doing, it's not a coping mechanism. It's just honestly, it's just pure stubbornness and like absolute anger on so many people's behalf is to say it's time to work and it's time to fight. So the fight is all of it. And, you know, and now a lot of what I'm doing is going to everyone, like all the people we're talking about here, saying, the neutral time is gone. You know, I know the depression, I know all this stuff, like we all sat in it and we all, but now it's like, okay.
You were all there.
Right.
Yeah.
So now it's time to either do something or understand that doing nothing means you're okay with all of us going away. Either way, like I'm not going to blame anybody for either of those things, but silence is now complicity. And that's not a fun message, but it's true. And so much of what I have to say now is unfortunate because I don't have anything else to go back to if we don't save this business. So there's no amount of reputation, there's no amount of, you know, manners, there's no amount of feelings that I'm not willing to step on to say, look, like we're like, you know, you don't. I asked an emergency room doctor who's a regular of mine. I was like, what do you say to a person who comes to you in the emergency room and they're bleeding? What do you say to them? And he's like, nothing. I'm like, right. You don't say anything. You just fix the problem. So we're the ones screaming, saying like, I've lost all my limbs and I'm bleeding out. And everyone wants to tell us like to give us reasons to help ourselves. I'm like, I'm sorry. That's not where I'm at.
Okay. So we have 5 minutes left. I just want to be conscious of time. But I do have the question of like, what can people do? Like, what are the things that you need people who are watching this? Because I think a lot of us, me included, and I'm working, I'm fighting, but like, what can we do? What are tangible things that people can do right now?
I mean, the biggest thing that's going on right now is we're organizing, and we're organizing in different ways, and there's groups who are doing it, and you know, so finding ways to coordinate is important, super important. you know, and we're creating mechanisms. You know, I'm working with thirstgroup.org. So
we have a big volunteer day on September 15th with them. So if people are interested in volunteering for Thirst, we are doing part of our day of service for Campari, and we're working with Michael and with the team from Thirst on that. So if you guys want to get involved with that, go to Campari Day of Service, and we will sign up to volunteer for that. It's going to be a big day of getting people signed up.
Right, and it's under and one of the things I'm going to do, not just with Thirst but along other channels, is you know, since there's not one thing you can ask someone to do, all you can do is say help. So we're gonna kind of coordinate with a bunch of different groups of people a daily, like 5 to 10 minute live stream that will be recorded and posted. Be like, these are the marching orders for today. What I'm asking everyone who's in this business, every bartender, every brand new barback who just started, every business owner, any brand person anyone who makes any kind of money off this living, what I'm asking every single person is designate half an hour of your day to the fight somehow. So by all means, come onto my live stream. We talk about it all the time, and we talk to people who can help coordinate. By all means, go to Thirst and, you know, find out how you can help them. By all means, go to IRC, the Independent Restaurant Commission. By all means, even if you're just finding an article on Facebook and liking and sharing it, that helps. Even if you're going to a podcast, like, you know, mine's the CottonmouthClubPresents.com. Like, liking and sharing those things helps because it increases visibility, increases all these things. Eventually, and every once in a while, we'll go to everybody. Like, I need to be able to say, okay, next Tuesday, I need 1 million people to send a message to Sylvester Turner, who's the mayor of Houston. And 1 million people, when you're looking at us, isn't really that many. You know, I made a video and all of a sudden it had 300,000 views. I'm like, well, that's new. Never done that before. It's only because people, like, you know, that's the power we have. And so if nothing else, I would say that 30 minutes a day should be go look stuff up online and share it. And that's a good place to start. And, you know, definitely Thirst Group as a you know, and our live stream, which is at 9:00 Central every night, is starting to become more of a nationally organized conversation about stuff people can do. And by all means, you can directly get in touch with me, and I will happily put you in touch with any number of people who would say like what should happen next. But it's a day-to-day thing, and honestly, Annalise, we're making it up as we go along. But,
I know, and so am I. And so people are like, how can I help? I'm like, I don't know, like I had this moment at work back when we used to do parties, and we showed up and the venue was like, I mean, it doesn't matter now, and the time before, and the party was crushed. Like, they thought they were going to get like maybe 100 people, and there were legit 500 people lined up down the street. Like, this thing was insane. And, well, I'm exaggerating, maybe 300 people. And in this little tiny venue, and we were the sponsors. And I had this moment where I just walked in and I was like, I just grabbed a bus tub.
Of course.
Cause like, and my coworker was like, well, do you need, and I was like, I either need you to know to grab a bus tub or I need you to go sit down.
Right. Don't ask me.
I don't have time. I don't have time. Like, I just need you to. So it's this funny thing of like, we need to grab the bus tub and start helping. And a lot of us don't know how. So the more often, and like one of my skills is also like, I need to learn and be better about like how to clearly articulately ask for help. But that's one of the things we need to learn how to do better too. So like, I think having those tangible, that's great advice. Like, spend half an hour, find a way to help somebody, find a way that's contributing, and invest your own time, do your own work and figuring that out, but also supporting your podcast, supporting Thirst. There's some really easy ways to do that.
Well, no, so I know we're almost out of time, but I just want to.
We can go over.
Okay, cool.
I mean, we can go over like a minute. I'm gonna be careful.
Okay, fine. We don't like. I now, especially because this has been going on a long time, I get a lot of people being proud of what I'm doing and being like, you know, yay, good for you. Like, I'm so proud. I'm like, okay, like, I'm done with that too. Like, it's time. Like, everyone's got a camera on their phone. Like, all I ever did was light up this phone and just scream into it. You know, everyone has these things. Like, we all need help. And, you know, and like you said, like, there's nothing worse when you're in the weeds of someone saying, like, how can I help? I'm like, if you don't know already, then you can't. So, like you said, sit down or take this bus tub and take it off my hands. But, you know,
or watch me. Watch what I'm doing and then do what I'm doing. and I'll go do
Right.
something else. Yes.
But also, you know, we are now faced with the fact, because no one is coming to help us, we are now all trying to learn all these new skills that we never had before. So we,
Yep.
you know, it took me a long time even to figure out how I can even say the words like to help. So we're learning how to lobby, we're learning how to organize, we're learning all these things. So we're all in the middle of it, just like everybody else is. But yeah, like get involved.
We had one other question, and I just want to make sure it's kind of going back to our earlier conversation, but I just want to make sure I answer everything and be a good moderator. Beyond having the tools and knowledge to be successful, I believe work culture, employee happiness is important to be successful. How do you create a positive work culture for your employees beyond rewarding good employees with good shifts? We expect so much from our bartenders. What do you do to show appreciation?
I empower them. I mean, and that's a wonderful, what do they call it? Virtuous cycle, right? You want your bartender to be able to have control over their work. You know, I empower them even in the creation and making of cocktails. You know, I don't have standards. I have fences and borders, and we work and we talk and we listen to each other. And I'm like, look, your Manhattan is this way. Do your Manhattan because your guests love it. Instead of making everyone try to be like, no one's going to be me. I need them to be themselves. So those things kind of happen at the same time. So making sure they know that they have control over their work and their clientele, I think is probably the best thing I can think of.
Love that. Someone just wrote, not everyone has the instinct to just jump in. So I just wanted to say that too, of like, yes, I know that a lot of people don't have that instinct, but also see what the people around you are doing and support them in what they're doing. Jump in and do that. Like, I think that this is also part of that process of how we're learning, and we're learning the way we learned behind the bar. You're a mentor behind the bar. You model how you want things done or how you figured something out. You model the thought process and then you hand it off, and someone else can do that while you go on to do the next thing. So I think there's going to be a lot of that. It's just going to happen really rapidly right now because we need a lot of help.
But that's also why I do the live stream every night. And, you know, the point of it, and some people are very cynical and they're just like, you just want to be internet famous. I'm like, you think I want to do this? Like, you think this is my gig? You know, I'm not making money off this.
Oh my God.
Like, all I'm going to do is prolong my own demise. But the reason why I encourage people to come and participate on a regular basis in the live stream is because now there's more and more national people. We talk about these things all the time. People have questions. It's often answered by people from Thirst Group or for other people. And, you know, that's it. This is the bar that everyone can come to try to learn what needs to happen. This is the bar everyone, and I happen to be the bartender in it. And sometimes I have other people come with me and sometimes I don't. But this is the place where people can come to say, ask that question. Ask it on my live stream, and you'll have 10 answers from people just in the stream, and I will answer it myself in whatever specific way possible. So that's growing quite a bit, and you know, someone's got to do it. And I don't know anyone else who is. People
are all trying different things. There's no map for this. We've never been here before. And I keep my phrase is, if things were different, things would be different. Like, things were different, things would be different, but right now there's no roadmap.
But we're also getting better at coordinating, which is why I'm glad to be on here with you. And so, I mean, obviously, thanks to Portland Cocktail Week, thanks to Campari and Russell's Reserve, but of course,
always happy to support.
But this is what it looks like. This is the work. This is what it looks like. This is when we're all kind of operating in our own lanes. It's fine, but we don't need to repeat our own work, and we all need the same army. The one thing that I've been good at up until now is to say, okay, you need someone to rouse the rabble. I will be the rabble rouser. I can get everybody mad. I can get them happy. I can get them angry. Like, I'm a bartender. It's my thing. The one thing I know how to do.
I got this. Someone else got to do the next part, but I can get this part done.
You guys organize and don't ask me to keep the calendar. But we can, I know,
Please don't.
But we can do this thing. And if everyone commits to saying like, okay, we'll pay attention and we'll do our thing. It's like, I will say, on this day, we need X thing, and I'm going to want hundreds of thousands of people to do it, and that requires sharing, and that's what we need.
I love it. So the last thing I'll just say, like, I notice people get burnt out, people get worn out by doing this work. Please take care of yourself. Please, to everyone who's working on this and fighting, like, please also
see the color of this.
Yeah, like, you want to, this is a team effort. This is a group project. This is not on any one person. That being said, you can catch Michael on the cottonmouthclubpresents.com. You're there every night. You said, what time do you start?
That's my podcast.
That's your podcast.
That's cottonmouthclubpresents.com, and that's
there you go.
That's where we talk about bar culture and cool stuff like that. But it also, we do have specific topics about pandemic and closing, because that's a whole different channel. On Instagram Live every night at the Cottonmouth Club. We are always there. They can find that through we're on Facebook as well, whatever. But I mean, like tonight, every Tuesday I have Robin Robinson. So tonight I'll be talking to Robin. We're starting to do regular things with Thirst and with other groups, but if nothing else, it's me going on saying, like, this sucks. How bad does this suck? This is what I want you to do now. This is why we need to save it. Like, it's kind of rinse repeat.
So please come and join Michael on his Instagram Live. We always have fun stuff, interesting, educational, compelling, difficult conversations and education here at Portland Cocktail Week Distance Learning on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Our Campari sponsored. There's other wonderful sponsors throughout the week, but I don't mess with that. I just mess on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm in here, my team's in here, talking with some really great thinkers, drinkers, and writers, and all sorts of people. And Michael, I thank you so much for coming on and sharing your brain and opening up and being so candid and honest and open. And I always love having conversations with you. I prefer them to be in person.
Me too.
But this is fine.
One day we'll get back to it. Right.
So thank you so much for your time. Thank you everyone for joining today and being part of this. And I really look forward to seeing what you all do to help the industry. We're always here. If you need anything, reach out. I think my Instagram connects here somewhere. So does Mike's. And we'll be back with you soon. Anything you want to say in closing?
Thank you to everyone who asked the questions. Thank you, Annalise. It's always great to talk to you, but you're such a compassionate interviewer and great conversationalist. Thank you, Portland Cocktail Week, obviously, for having me, because I love what you guys are doing, and Campari is sponsoring. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Leo. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Leo.
Yeah. We can close off. Thanks, guys.